the sigma interest-based subculture. Now, because of the abstract interests of sigmas, you may find that their social interests do not overlap very well with the social interests of alphas, betas, or omegas. The interest in respectability generally is shared by alphas and betas. Um, an interest in non-respectability is shared by omegas. The interests of sigmas tend to have an unusual abstract quality to them. I would like to say that there's a number of things I find very dull, but if a person who is passionate about that subject wants to share that subject with me and talk for 5 or 10 minutes about why it is so interesting and important to them, I can often find a way to engage with the topic because it is a personal sigma interest to them. There is I'm going to say a sigma interest group subculture called the Boring Society. And they gather for a kind of conference, and people will give a speech upon an obscure interest. We're talking about stamps, or the history of stoplights, or tickets for trains. And this sort of thing tends to escape the interest of people that don't have a Sigma sort of brain. But personally, I'm quite jealous of people having found a community who will like 100 people to sit down and learn something like that together. I've referenced before on this channel and in this series a television series which was about a television network. Um, and one of the main characters was an ENTJ who I believe to have been an Alpha Prime. He was later defenestrated to becoming an Alpha Omega and then an Alpha Sigma. But as he was being groomed for the potential ascension to an Apex Alpha position, he employed a private investigator to do a background check upon him to see if they could find any dirt that would damage his impeccable position. And what was discovered is he was a collector of something unusual, not something you would consider an ultra masculine, dominant alpha hobby. He was a collector of antique cookie jars, and he collected those antique cookie jars under an assumed name, um, wearing a different style of clothing. But it made perfect sense to him because it grabbed his own attention. And so you can form long-term or short-term sigma interest group subcultures based on creating a central nucleus. That is, we're interested in fill in the blank, uh, vintage horror films, listening to jazz on vinyl, listening to speeches about obscure scientific topics, um, museums, exploring abandoned historical buildings. And those people that are interested are often sigmas. Now, you can have young people of other things, but respectability tends to phase out certain interests among people. What you will find among sigmas especially is a sense that if I'm still interested in that thing at 30 or 40 or 50, married or unmarried, gainfully employed or not gainfully employed, I'm pursuing that interest. Even though it would be considered perhaps um, not respectable, not the image you want as a grown, responsible alpha or beta. But if it interests me or you as a Sigma at any age, you pursue that interest. Um, some unusual scientific or creative or historical thing. Um, and it's because majority of Sigmas tend to be NTs of some kind in a Myers-Briggs sense. Those tend to be whatever you would think NT interests might be. You can't generalize 100%, but you know, there are science things and art things and history things and creative things. And I suppose then that not only because Sigmas tend to be autonomous, tend to have a hard time agglutinating into groups of people, you add that to trying to find people that share your interests. Sigma interest-based subcultures tell us two things. One, that they're a very special thing to Sigma interpersonal lives. And secondly, very hard to obtain. If you as a Sigma have unusual interests, um, it may have been very, very difficult to identify a person or two or three that consistently want to um, share that learning or go to that kind of event with you, or this particular kind of activity, board games, antique board games. And so, one of the sadnesses of Sigma life, because we all need friends and human connection of some kind, could be the ongoing quest to find friends that share some of your abstract interests. Thank you. Please like and subscribe.